The Book of Recollections, Episode 36, Up in Smoke, by Dicesylvania. Good, you're back. And I was thinking, all this talk of, hey, where's Pax? Why is the king not in Greenspring? Yada yada, got me curious as well. And guess what I found? In the Redlands, a hard place where the unforgiving climate was challenging the survival of even the bravest people, King Pax and his group traveled to Ramidava, the capital of the Red Kingdom, seeking a truce with their king Zalmoxi. The cunning ruler offered Pax two choices: either marry one of his daughters and father a child that could unite both kingdoms, or vanquish the threat that the shadows posed, constantly hunting and destroying his faithful ascended peers. Known as the Crimson Herald, it loomed over the city of Sarmisegetuza, and none of the brave heroes who tried to oppose it lived to tell the tale. Choosing the more perilous option, the group reached Sarmisegetuza after a long and exhausting trip, unaware of the danger they had exposed themselves to. With Isari gone and Adam dying, Tulrok made use of his final wish from the genie lamp, teleporting the Crimson Herald straight to the Red King's location, realizing it was the only chance they had at preserving their own lives. When a chariot made of stars came after Adam to whisk him away into the celestial expanse, Tulrok would not abandon him, latching onto it and both lifting up towards the sky. Pax was left behind with only Shaq, Amma, and Emma. The two conjoined twins then asked Pax for what they were promised, unaware they had used the cursed word magic. A violent sandstorm rose quickly, sweeping everything in its path, including Amma and Emma, who were lost inside the treacherous storm. Shaq almost suffered the same fate as them, had it not been for Pax's quick wit and action, throwing Shaq a rope to latch onto. Trapped in the scorching sun, the two decided to head for shelter inside the ruins of the former great city of Sarmisegetuza, which loomed ominously into the distance. They were greeted only by crumbling stone walls, draped in creeping vines, and towers leaning precariously. The place was cold and lifeless, almost as if the ruins had been there for thousands of years. Drawings of elongated candles were everywhere they turned their gaze, etched into stone, worn into the ground, resembling some form of gathering place for the faithful. Images of all types of creatures, offering their bodies to become beings of light, were plastered all over the crumbling remains of a once majestic temple, while burnt bones of the ascended, bearing Luminite symbols, were scattered all across the ruins. After an hour's worth of travel through the desolate ruins, the two came across a seemingly natural pit, a deep, narrow chasm that seemed to stretch on with no end in sight. Two carvings were faintly glowing near the edge. Shaq quickly recognized the Orcish words that meant the Unbound, while Pax read the same message in Celestial. When preparing to descend into the nothingness of the pit, Shaq quickly spotted what seemed like dense, dark water, springing from the sides of the circular walls, which they later determined to be Sabbath water. Realizing that the pit was in no way the best alternative to take, they redirected their attention towards the old temple, where Isari had previously been defeated. A shadowy figure, seemingly made out of smoke, with glowing blue eyes, drifted into view. With the impression that the creature had already seen them, Pax and Shaq started making noise, trying to draw it near them. But the smoky figure violently attacked Shaq, going after Pax next. Using his booming voice and his intimidating diplomacy, with a touch of bluff, he asked the shadowy figure to aid them. The creature pointed towards the scattered bones and towards the place Isari had perished, leaving the two of them even more confused. Using his magical abilities, Shaq tried to read the creature to better understand it, getting the sense that it was disoriented. It was an ever-shifting mass of shadow or smoke that did not obey the normal laws of physics. It felt like a structureless void, a self-destructive entity that was slowly crumbling, its glowing blue eyes being nothing but energy nodes tied to chaos. But the creature sought for a place to hide, retreating towards the place Isari had died, then moving straight to the natural and endless crevice. Shaq decided to take his chances and go down the well, aware that the inner walls posed a threat to his very being. Tied to Pax with a rope, he started his descent into nothingness, trying his best not to touch the water on the side. When trying to fill a flask with some of the water, a moment of carelessness exposed one of his fingers to the dense Sabbath water, eroding the tip to nothing but bone. Out of the dangerous crevice, Pax kept Shaq under observation to see if he was out of danger. But when necrosis started to spread, they both decided it was best to chop off the finger and prevent the illness from moving up to his entire body. Then they plotted a course back to the capital of the Red Kingdom. On their way, they came across two water genasis, their clothes torn and burnt almost to a crisp. Terror plastered all over their faces, desperately fleeing from Ramidava with its now cracked walls looming in the distance. They were constantly shouting about the undefeatable herald, about the faithful ascending, about Lumanites fleeing. Shaq tried to catch them, but was halted by Pax, who drew his attention to the flickering lights, the devas that were ascending, flickering in strange patterns, then disappearing, only to be replaced with other elongated lights. Then the towering figure that was the Crimson Herald broke their line of sight, a dark skeletal figure with crimson wings surrounded by dark energy. Appalled by the tragedy that befell Ramidava, Pax and Shaq would find trouble of their own when the herald turned its gaze towards them, eyes filled with revenge while moving towards them. But the two were quick to evade him through the chaotic streets of the city, making their way towards the palace to escape through the underground tunnels. However, right when they thought they were in the clear, the herald blocked their path, seeking retribution. Quick on his feet but taking a risk, Shaq let himself be taken away by a sandstorm, while Pax swooshed past the towering figure inside the tunnels, only to discover that the Zalmoxi had abandoned his people, judging by the corpses of a few guardians and a crown that once belonged to one of the princesses. Not only did he flee the city, he also left it defenseless, taking his entire army and letting his people ascend in hopes of being saved, only to be viciously terminated by the herald. Not unlike the Red King, Pax also cheated death for the second time that day, when he exited the tunnel to encounter the same foe who tried to attack him. Managing to escape in the shadows with just a scratch, he went searching for Shaq, which proved to be a far more difficult task than he had anticipated. Shaq had wandered the desert for a few days, considering himself lucky for the remaining provisions he had received from Ama and Isari's followers. Pax found him with 2 boulders tied to each side, a measure of prevention for any incoming sandstorm. In the next month, they continued to stumble through the unforgiving lands. Letters kept being drawn to Pax, but all were disintegrated before ever fully reaching him. And because they were of a magical nature, they brought along with them all the disasters associated with it. Meteorites falling from the sky, heat waves rippling across the land, tremors that would shake and shatter the ground. And they were slowly running out of provisions and time. However, it would appear that luck was still on their side as they reached some sort of farm housing 9 cacti with 2 deformed orcs working the lands. Gers, a tall man with holes in his shirt which revealed multiple sets of eyes on his body, along with his wife, Elena, a woman with no fingers, kindly greeted them and welcomed them into their humble shack. In exchange for Pax helping them capture sweat and moisture from the air to help water their crops, the couple provided Pax and Shack a place to stay, offering them their children's bedroom, taking advantage of the cold breeze that passed through it. After a long rest, right before they left, Gers warned him about the upcoming war that would befell on Greenspring, led by Zamolxi, trusting that Pax was a good man and would be able to put a stop to it. With those terrible events in mind, Pax and Shack went on their way. In the distance, they spotted 3 flying figures, a purple Pegasus carrying a humanoid with hair half black, half purple, a skeletal horse with a small girl with white vitiligo marks riding on its back, and also on top of the horse, another figure cloaked in drapey robes, wearing a white plague doctor mask and riding the most horrific creature anyone has ever seen. 3 guesses who? Well, I know you're smarter than that, and you only need 1, but where would be the fun in that? With the group reconvening, there was a lot to unpack. Castiel introduced his newest offsprings to Pax and Shack, Shadowfall and Hilden, whose name is disclosed for the first time. Grace angrily slapped Pax in the face, making up for it with a long and tight embrace. Pax brought them up to speed about the incoming peril that would befall Greenspring after their unsuccessful visit to the Redlands, the Red Herald being the straw that broke the camel's back, inciting Zamolxi to march to war with them. Pax also told them about Adam, who was whisked away by a celestial chariot along with Tulrock, which pushed Castiel to create an abomination with Adam's face and smash it to a pulp, being the only way he knew to cope with grave news. Grace had unfortunate news of her own, as the city of Greenspring was slowly turning against their king. The number of allies was thinning, and the fate of the people was draining. With no time to lose, they took to the skies. Humanus, together with Shack and Hilden, were drawn to an ancient and gnarly tree that had its branches filled with seemingly pulsating golden fruit, with one dripping its nectar to the roots of the tree, vanishing into the soil as if it had been drunk. When they tried to approach it, a barricade of 3 Yele formed between them and the rest of the group. Songstress Doina created a song out of every word she spoke. Enchantress Ruxandra undulated her body to ensnare Shack's and Hilden's senses, while the stern guardian, that was Katrina, was keeping a close eye on them. But the Yele were more curious rather than dangerous, agreeing to follow them along and learn about the world outside of the green forest. On their way, they regrouped with their younger sister, Maruntsika, a pixie who turned out to have quite a unique sense of humor, putting all sorts of curses on the group, which affected the way they spoke, their perception of the world around them, adding a comical element to an otherwise dire situation. But they soon discovered they were not alone in that forest, feeling a presence approaching them from behind, calling out to them, definitely familiar to at least one in the group. This was the recap for episode 36 of VIM, as told by the Book of Recollection. I was the raspy voice Count Bear, your VIM recap narrator. If you'd like to join us as VIM the Tale of Immortality premieres, tune in on Sunday at 5 p.m. UTC on youtube.com/@Dicesylvania. New recaps drop every Friday evening, and remember, every subscribe keeps the magic alive. Thanks for sticking with us. Good day, good night, and don't let the vampires bite.